imagine that you take twins, identical twins who were separated at birth, and then you track their IQ as they age. Well, by the time they're 60, their IQs are so similar, regardless of their background, that it's as if you're testing the same person twice.
Right, so in this video, Jonah Peterson goes into details about the fact of IQ. It's safe to say that there are those who are gifted in certain things, and I think that in our own lives, we've seen people growing up, either in our schools or classes, exude exceptional abilities in maths, in learning, in reading, in writing, or even in creativity.
During our research, we found a video of you where someone asked you about IQ, and you said you were previously tested quite a while ago, and you said it was in excess of 150. Granted, it does decline as you age. And you also said having a high IQ like that means that you have high volatility or variance in other areas of intelligence.
As intelligence increases, the variability in intelligence increases. So psychometrically, there's sort of one way to be not very bright and a variety of ways to be very bright. So there's differentiation at the upper end, right? And so I would say, I'm not particularly gifted mathematically, so I struggled with statistics. I eventually figured it out, but it certainly didn't come to me easily. I don't tend to think mathematically. I've certainly had students who are like immeasurably more intelligent than me on the mathematical front. I had a student at Harvard. She went from 0 statistics to winning teaching awards for teaching it in about 6 months. She was a little autistic. She was also a very good writer. That's a rare combination to have that extreme spatial mathematical intelligence and extreme verbal intelligence. You get a person like that now and then, but it's pretty rare.
And she was just coded that way to be able to do that? That wasn't anything that she did to be able to learn quickly?
IQ is very biologically determined.
Mm-hmm.
Very. And it's very rough. It's no wonder my student and I, Daniel Higgins, who is a partner of mine in business still, we, at Harvard in the 1990s, we did a lot of work investigating the world of psychometric measurement. So that would be the assessment of cognitive ability and personality. And we delved very deeply into the literature on neuropsychological function. And so that's from a field that basically derived its information from animal experimental studies as well as study of human beings with various forms of brain damage. There was an effort, I don't know if that's still ongoing, to develop tests that would be associated, where people would show decrements that were associated with known areas of brain damage. They developed a lot of specialized tests. My student and I, on my old supervisor, we computerized a battery of so-called neuropsychological tests, and then we used them and IQ tests and personality to predict academic performance and managerial performance and like line worker performance, trying to figure out, well, 2 things. What exactly is it that makes someone productive depending on their positioning? And then also, how could that be measured effectively so that if you wanted to hire or place or promote, you could do that in the most effective possible manner. And so that meant that we had to thoroughly familiarize ourselves with the neuropsychological literature, which I already kind of knew, with the IQ literature, which was quite new to me, and then with the personality literature. And so the basic claim of the psychometricians on the IQ side is that for all intents and purposes, IQ is relatively unitary. So intelligence, general cognitive ability. Personality is multidimensional, but cognitive ability, although it differentiates at the upper end, is a pretty solid unit. And no one likes that idea. And no wonder. It's no wonder. So why would people not like it? Well, it seems very unfair and anti-egalitarian to note that there's wide variation in the trait that is the best predictor of long-term success in complex occupations. It's not like the cards are dealt out equally. They're not dealt out equally
How much of that is genetic?
Most of it.
So if you have smart parents, you're probably going to be smart.
Parents, you're going to be slightly less smart than the average of your parents. Because imagine that your intelligence isn't determined only by your parents, it's determined in a way by the whole stream of your ancestry. Now, if you have 2 smart parents, on average, their ancestors are going to be slightly less smart than they are. So you get the best way to predict your IQ, if we didn't know anything else, would be to take the IQ of your mother and father and average them and then reduce it somewhat, because that's called regression towards the mean. So there's a tendency for biological forms to default back to their standard configuration.
Or increase it if the average was lower than.
Yeah, that's right. So if
Yeah.
you had two parents who were impaired in their cognitive ability or far below average, on
So-
average, you'd be smarter than they were.
Would that then suggest that with enough time, we're all going to be about even if everyone's
we
kind of
are. The
yeah.
average is IQ. The average is 100.
Mhm.
So
Hasn't it been going up over time though?
there's debate about that. It's gone up over time in some ways, for sure.
Mhm.
So although it's difficult to increase IQ, you get companies now and then who pop up and claim that they can increase your cognitive function. There's zero evidence for that. There's no. What happens if you practice a complex task, you tend to get much better at the complex task, say a video game, but it doesn't transfer over and make you generally smarter. No one's figured out how
Right.
to increase IQ with cognitive exercises. You can maintain or increase your IQ with exercise, cardiovascular and weightlifting, because your brain is a very demanding organ. So if your cardiovascular system is healthy, especially as you age, that's a huge deal. There's nothing that you can do that's more important than staying in physical shape to maintain your cognitive ability. So, but nobody knows how to increase it. I mean, that would be a discovery of infinite value, but no one's figured it out. You can suppress IQ quite easily by, say, not stimulating young children to the degree that their intelligence has room to play, let's say, or by not breastfeeding them. That's a good way to have stupider children, if that's what you're after. Breastfeeding confers, I think, something like a 3 to 4 point increment per year breastfed. It's something like
Why is that? Is it just the
optimal
bond?
nutrition. The brain's a very demanding organ. And so it uses a tremendous amount of your metabolic resources. And so nutrition and exercise make a huge difference. So if you asked about biological determinism with regards to IQ. So imagine that you take identical twins who were separated at birth, and then you track their IQ as they age. Well, by the time they're 60, their IQs are so similar, regardless of their background, that it's as if you're testing the same person twice. So strangely enough, if IQ is environmentally determined, you'd expect twins separated at birth to diverge as they age. They don't, they converge. So
I can see that why that makes people very upset.
there's a whole bunch of reasons to be upset by it. I mean, when Daniel and I sorted this out in the 90s, we thought that this might be the shoal upon which Western culture demolishes itself, because IQ is a vicious predictor of long-term success. It's by far the best predictor. It's 5 times as powerful as conscientiousness, which is the next best predictor. So conscientiousness is associated with industriousness and orderliness. It's associated with political conservatism. It's associated with traditionalism. Outgroup, let's say, skepticism towards outgroups to some degree. That's conservatism more. But and we probably can't measure conscientiousness as accurately as we can measure IQ. We have to rely on personality scales and self-report and reports from other people. That's the best we've been able to manage. And no one has been able to come up with a practical test of conscientiousness. Like, I've probably tried 50 things in my lab, bringing conscientious people into the lab, giving them different sorts of tests, seeing if we could figure out what activity conscientious people would do better in the lab, so we could use that as a measure. We could never do it. So we did things like, for example, imagine you have rows of N's, M's, U's, which are visually quite difficult to distinguish. Imagine a variety of rows of those, and then your job is to go through and circle all the N's. You'd think perhaps that would be associated with something like diligence or industriousness, conscientiousness, but it's just another IQ test. It's very, very hard to find a cognitive test that isn't just IQ. And IQ is very easy to measure. This is another thing that makes it troublesome, let's say, apart from the fact of unbelievable variation between people. Like, people with extreme IQs are so much more productive than people with on the lower end of the scale, that they're not in the same universe in a sense. And they're certainly in the same moral universe, and they have the same value intrinsically. And And IQ is not associated with morality, let's say. Just because you're smarter doesn't mean you're a better person. And in fact, I think there's a temptation that comes along with intelligence that's Luciferian, and that's been warned about in mythologies forever. Bitter intellect, the person who has been gifted by God, so to speak, with a great intellect, who believes that the world should bow at their feet in consequence, or presumes that their rational, what would you say, their cogitations produce systems of value that should be imposed upon the world. That's the Luciferian temptation. But there's a massive difference between people at the upper end of the cognitive distribution and people at the lower end. And so it's easy to measure. It's very robust. So, for example, imagine you had a library of 10,000 questions. Questions about anything. They require abstract cognition to solve. That's the only criteria. Multiple choice questions, vocabulary questions, general knowledge questions, mathematical questions, spatial rotation questions, anything that requires abstract cognition. Okay, so they have 10,000 questions. Extract out a random set of 100 questions, give that to 100 people, sum their scores, rank order them. That's IQ. Now, the technical IQ test is correct for age, but that's irrelevant with regards to the measurement.
Yeah, a couple of takeaways from this video. Number one is that IQ is mostly genetically predetermined. You cannot increase IQ. But one thing you can do to maintain your IQ as you age is a lot of cardiovascular exercise. Number two is that IQ is a very good factor that can predict success across multiple disciplines if you so choose. Thank you for watching this video. There's more to come.